Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Literacy View. We have a special guest with us today. His name is Jeremiah Short, and I have his bio here. He has been in education for 9 years, and he is a teacher and presently a reading and writing interventionist. He has written 2 books, As I Took My Walk with God, volumes 1 and 2, and a resource called Phenomenal Intervention, the Playbook. That's what got my attention, by the way, Jeremiah. And in addition to writing books, he has created several instructional routines called Phenomenal Word Power, T.I.D.E, Bloom's Units, Reading, and the Phenomenal Classroom. So we welcome Jeremiah here with us today. And we are going to focus on a blog that he had written. And it's on his website called The Phenomenal Student. And this is Phenomenal Reflection. It's new, but I like it. And so I read it. It was a short blog, and it got my attention. And Jeremiah's on Twitter, and Judy and I are always looking for fresh new ideas. And when I saw this blog and I saw your perspective, Jeremiah, Judy and I agreed we wanted to have you on.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to start off with just what you had said, that you were, and I'm going to quote you.
Oh, that's very cool.
As you said, while I've never stated a side in the debate, I didn't realize until recently that I was a science of reading, structured literacy teacher my entire career. And I'm just going to give some background. You've been in a balanced literacy environment, correct?
Yes, very much so.
So tell us a little bit about what you do and when you came to the realization that you are a structured literacy teacher.
I first started off, I didn't even know that was a term when I first started my career. In my first 2 years, I was self-contained. So I wasn't really focused on reading or just one subject in particular. But early in my career, I kind of started to gear more toward the reading side. And we were mentioning before, my sister's a teacher and she's more of a balanced literacy person. And a few people in my family are teachers, Spanish. I have a cousin that teaches English to foreigners. So that's kind of like our thing to be, ELA teachers is kind of in the realm of what we do. So I think I naturally kind of geared toward that. But at my first school, we were more about test taking. So it wasn't really a method. It was more, hey, can you get these scores on these tests? So it wasn't really about a certain method. So I didn't really get too much and I was an ACP as well, which is alternative certification here in Texas. And so I didn't really know much about the methods. So when I went to my second school, that's when I kind of started learning about the differences as I articulated in the article, where, I went in, I didn't realize I was an explicit reading teacher where I would go in and actually, okay, we're going to do whole group and we're going to teach whatever the skill is, context clues, or you're going to teach theme, or you're going to teach character traits, and it's going to be explicit teaching. And I didn't use small group instruction during the regular instructional block. And I had never done it in my career, which I didn't know is actual structured literacy. I had no clue about this until I had a meeting with an administrator and they wanted me to switch up how I was teaching, saying I need to do more groups. I literally had no clue what they were talking about. I was like, what are you talking about? I do tutoring after school. I do RTI, I already do groups. So in my mind, I'm already doing them, but they wanted me to do more. But in reality, now that I know about the balanced literacy structures, of course, the mini lesson and do the little small groups and all that good jazz. And I was like, oh, okay. Years later, I realized, that's what they wanted me to do. So essentially they wanted me to change my teaching style. And so my second year, I kind of did, my fourth year, I taught second grade. I actually did do a little bit of mix of structured literacy and balanced literacy as far as my approach, because I did explicit teaching, but I did guided reading. But really, until I kind of spent most of that, my fifth year teaching out of teaching, or fifth year as a regular teacher, out of teaching and researching and things like that. And that's when I came around to science and reading. And that's when I started kind of hearing the term structured literacy. And now, once I became an interventionist, I realized that my method, honestly, I thought intervention had nothing to do with balanced literacy, but I soon found out that it did. That you have LLI, you have these programs. And of course, even at my building, a lot of people wanted me to do that, but I had a different method of doing things, which I didn't realize was a structured literacy intervention, which focused more on phonics or on whatever skill the kids needed. So that's kind of the luncheon off point of kind of like how I kind of came to that realization, like, oh, okay, that's why I've been running the problems, because I'm teaching the exact opposite of how everybody else is teaching. I kind of heard it.
I'm going to stop you right there. You were teaching the exact opposite of everyone else.
Pretty much.
Even though you didn't really know what it was called, but you were teaching the exact opposite of everybody else. So now Judy, as we just all met, by the way, right?
Okay.
So we just met, and Judy told you that she was a balanced literacy person and she was a reading recovery teacher. So I'm going to have Judy jump in now and respond to what you just said about being in this environment, doing this explicit teaching, even though you really didn't know the terms, you just knew what you had to do to kind of get results, right? But you didn't really know there was a title to this. So Judy, I'm going to ask you to jump in, because you and I have spoken about this a lot, and this do-it-yourself method sometimes where teachers have to resort to do it yourself, because all around you, it's kind of this balanced literacy and people are trying to figure this out.
All right. So Jeremiah, really nice to meet you. Really, really excited about it. Excited to learn more about your book and all your resources as well. So I'm kind of like, I don't think the word is jealous, maybe envious, but my journey looked a little bit different than yours. When I started teaching back in 2000, that was my first year teaching, phonics was on its way out. We heard sprinkles of phonics. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, get rid of this, get rid of the open core, throw the letter people in the closet, use it a little bit, don't use it. We all knew that phonics was important, but it was kind of, that's it. We were being given directives that we're going to do something called balanced literacy. And, I was a young kid at that time. I just graduated college. There weren't a lot of reading. There wasn't a lot of reading instruction in the college that I went to. I mean, I went to Brooklyn College. It's a well-known school for my master's, but it was a lot about, doing little themes and student engagement and participation and stuff like that. But I didn't have the confidence to just say, hey, wait a minute, this is the way it should be done. My journey looked a little bit different. I mean, I always worked hard, but did I know what I know now? No. My journey looked different. I was in reading recovery, deep into it. And as I've said on many episodes, many of the things that I learned there, a lot of people won't know. There were fantastic pieces, but there were really some pieces that were fundamentally missing. And I knew it in my stomach. I knew it in my gut. But part of me was like, let me see. And then I remember whispering to friends, what about dyslexia? Are we allowed to even talk about it? And then I was like, all right, so I knew I was smart, but this journey was a lot. It took longer for me to get to that point. And then also in my training, there were some kids, they would fly like an eagle with those level texts. But now the research is saying, what is it, Faith? 40% of kids will fly no matter what?
Doesn't matter what you do, pretty much 40% could learn no matter what approach you use.
But then there were these other kids that I had, especially like the kids that I work on in the second round of reading recovery. They were really, really struggling, a lot of those kids. Some of those kids were English language learners. Some of those kids had parents that were illiterate, no support at home and so forth. And here I was, enthusiastic, thought that these kids could definitely succeed, and they could succeed. But do I think that that was the best method of instruction for those kids looking back? Absolutely not.
So I'm going to jump in.
Absolutely not.
So, Jeremiah, I think what I'm hearing you say is you kind of went by instinct in terms of what you were thinking would work, and it was trial and error, and yet you were getting results because you knew to kind of look at the skills, what was missing, what did these kids need, and you used it, yet the administrators saw you were succeeding from what I read here, and you wrote the first criticism, and this came about 2018, 2020, and somebody said to you, you need to do more groups. That's what you said. And then your response was, I have the best scores on the grade level. And the administrator said, we're not talking about data. So what were they talking about? What did they want from you, Jeremiah?
I don't even know to this day, to be honest with you. And add a different nuggets to that. One of my teammates, she was a literacy coach for almost 15 years before she came back to being a teacher, and I still was outperforming her. And I would end up being a reteach teacher. But it was kind of like that type of thing. And I think it was kind of a schism between the principal, who was all about data. He didn't care anything about methods or anything like that. Reading level, he cared nothing about that. But the assistant principal, I know one of the comments I didn't realize at the time, I was only in my third year. I didn't realize this was I guess we were a raw podcast. So a damning comment was when they were talking about units of study, which wasn't required at the time. And I said that it's not very engaging. I'm not really feeling it. Apparently that just tore them to their soul. I didn't like units of study. This is what my principal told me, that was their baby and they loved it. And apparently I just offended them to the core probably with that comment, just things like that. So, because I would hear that throughout the year as far as stuff being engaging and things like that. So, and
wait, so am I getting you right? I don't mean to cut you off. So you mean you said that the Teachers College units of study, that's what you're talking about now, right?
Right.
Hawkins, reading and writing.
Wait, you said the word.
I know, where's a drink? Here it is. We have a Lucy drinking game. Every time somebody mentions Lucy, we have to take a drink. So here we go.
Oh my goodness.
Anyhow,
I might have should have grabbed one.
yeah, you need to have a drink. All right. Anyhow, so you said that you weren't feeling it. It wasn't, it wasn't working, and they took this almost as a personal offense. Is that?
Oh, very much so. And this was before the year, because some of the stuff was just, even we still use some of the stuff the next year. And honestly, at that time, what was I, 33, 34-year-old Black man? I'm like, there's no way. I read in one of the chapters, it said something like, do the minutes lesson and tell the kids to go out to the carpet and practice lickety split. I was like, there's no way, and you know what, you're gonna get me to say some mess like that. And I was like, that just goes against everything in my being talk. That's just, I don't talk like that. So it was kind of a lot of the things are very inorganic. And one of the funnier comments, I remember my sister's another thing that helped me become a great literacy teacher. My sister's one, even though she's balanced literacy, and it's funny, she just gave me a bunch of books, and I see named Debbie Diller and all these little names, these balanced literacy people. And her best friend actually won the teacher of the year of one of the surrounding districts for the whole district. And she said that they were doing units of study, and she said that in one of the chapters it teaches you, and I don't want to turn this into a Lucy Calls Bad session, but
Lucy, you said Lucy, sorry.
Oh, this
Drink
is
up.
Okay, so she said that in one of the chapters it talked about, what does it say, faking like you read a book. And so she, I guess, conferencing, one of those other buzzwords that I almost didn't go to a training this summer because I saw the word, but it said conferencing, and she conferenced with the students. She said that the response was immaculate, beautiful, but she said something told her to go actually read the book later. And so she went to go read a book. She said the kid was completely wrong. He was off base. Everything he said had nothing to do with the book. So she said it was ridiculous. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I got you.
Sing.
She said it sounded great, but he was wrong about everything. So I was like, man, this is lunacy. So yeah, that was just my indoctrination to, like I said, I knew it as the units of study. I didn't know it as reader's workshop or none of these terms. And my sister told me that Lucy Calkins kind of is the one, I mentioned that name again, sorry, is the one that created the workshop model.
I missed it on beat.
So she's the one that kind of created she created the workshop model. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So Obviously, I've never used the workshop model ever still to this day, but at the same time, I at least knew what it was at that point.
You know, I have a question, Jeremiah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what did your education and background look like? What were you learning when you went to school to be a teacher? What was the program like? And how did your aha moment come like instantly?
That's a good question.
Interestingly enough, I actually started off as a sports writer up until the point I became a teacher. And it's kind of a somewhat of a colorful story where I actually started essentially my journey to education essentially so I could be stable and actually write. I was a struggling writer and wanted to write. And I actually wanted to become a writer and actually got offered a writing job at the end of my first year as a paraprofessional, which I actually worked at a behavior school to start my career. So I kind of have that background. And I got offered a writing job and I told them like, no, I don't want it. I think I want to teach. So I caught the bug at that point. And a lot of people say I finally stopped running from it. And it's kind of helped me as a teacher because with that writing background, writing is literacy, obviously. So as I become a teacher, like I said, I've kind of absorbed the people that I've been around. So I feel my literacy background is, oddly enough, I just did a training and the guy asked me what my literacy training was. I don't have a master's yet. And I was like, man, I just read a lot of books. My first literacy coach was the best teacher to ever come through that district, the Carol Dixon. Shout her name out. Her name is Carol Dixon Hall. Now she's gotten married, but she had high scores when she was a second grade teacher. Kids were reading at fifth grade reading levels, like most of the class. Like that's what I learned from my sister, her best friend. I learned that's essentially what my literacy background is, learning from those people. So I feel like I was able to absorb that. And oddly enough, my principal actually was a high performer too in the classroom. So I learned a lot from those people as far as becoming, the teacher that I am. And a lot of it's through studying myself, especially now that I've learned the science of reading, because I was doing pretty cool stuff. My first 2 years, I didn't even realize it though, but when I started reading, I was like, oh, okay, I see what I was doing. I mean, I had students leading core response and doing different things that I didn't even realize that was pretty, one for a teacher to be doing, nevertheless for the students to do it and do it in unison is pretty cool. So I was doing the right things, I just didn't know it. So that's, I'm most proud of that. It just off natural instinct, I knew to do some of these things.
So interesting. I'm going to jump in with what you just said about that. You made me laugh, that comment from Lucy Calkins. I said Lucy again, but about the lickety split or something like that. And you're like, yeah, I'm a Black man. I don't even talk like that.
Yes, that's kind of
hilarious. That is so funny. So did you feel like, I'm just assuming then this school that you were in, did you kind of feel like you were just a fish out of water in this environment? I'm just curious.
I mean, now that I'm in my current environment and I'm going to, I'll tell people this is going to be my first year 3 out of school. I mean, I look at it now, I love the kids, but I was really in an environment where it wasn't best for me to grow and be the teacher I was meant to be, because they had their minds kind of set on this. I mean, it's kind of funny now that even a lot of the surrounding districts of where I'm at, they're having to switch to more structured literacy. I didn't think my district would do it, but the fact that, they were so set on balanced literacy and they thought it was the correct way. They want to talk to you about doing guided reading. Oh, you need to learn how to do running records, which I knew how to do this stuff. It's just, they were just gung-ho about it. Like, that's the only way. I mean, just as a aside, I've never looked at a running record after I've done it ever in life. I know they say they want you to study the running record to learn all that stuff, but even I had a chance to
looked at them day and night. I'm going to be honest. There was at some point that I would go home on the Metro North with them. I would look at them. I would write notes on them. Yeah, I was obsessed with them. That was until I wasn't, until I saw the light. But, Jeremiah, you said something else interesting. You mentioned the word conferencing. See, and conferencing is still, even though I'm in structured literacy now, I still feel that piece is so critical. Maybe not calling it conferencing, but checking in with kids and giving them specific feedback, I think is a critical piece. So I guess conferencing looks different in a structured literacy classroom, but I do think that that's a critical piece, being able to check in with kids and see how they're doing, even in a whole lesson, holding up those dry erase boards or walking around the room and giving kids feedback. Isn't that kind of best practice?
Yes. A lot of times what I do, and my kids hated it when I did intervention, I call something called text analysis or doing closed readings, where, it's a common passage, that's one of those buzzwords if you're talking about balanced and structured literacy. But kids being able to do that readers response. I like kids to discuss. So that's really one of the things I like to do. So that's where I kind of, one of my heat checks is when I'm reading through a passage, I have kids after the third or fourth paragraph, I'll ask them, what are you noticing? And if they say just a basic detail, like, oh, they went to the store, obviously they're not comprehending the text. But if they tell me the problem or they make an inference or talk about how the character is feeling, I was like, okay, they're thinking on a higher level. So those are a lot of times what I like to do. And obviously, yeah, with books and things like that. And one of the things I'm excited to do next year is to have kids be able to come up and do book talks like once a week. Because research has shown that does boost performance when you have once a week where kids just get to talk about whatever book they're reading. Because obviously, for one, my thing is I'm all about structured literacy in the sense of explicitly teaching skills, but I still want kids to read books. Because at the end of the day, that's going to be the gateway for them. You know, I love to read myself, and that's how I've learned. So I definitely want kids to be able to do that. So yes, I agree with you. Like I said, conferencing looks a little different, but I don't do it in the context of conferencing with them about a book I haven't read. I've never read Julie Bloom. I've never read Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing. Maybe I've read looked at some of them graphic novels. I've never read any of these books. So I like, what do I look like, you know, conferencing with them about a book I've never read? I don't know. Maybe Harry Potter. I at least know what happened.
Yeah.
You know,
but
so,
you know. That's important. That is a very important point.
Very good
Judy, that's my understanding of conferencing, is that teachers would conference with children about books that they have not read themselves. And the kids would give these very vague type of responses that you really don't know if they truly read it, but they would just talk to them and that would be acceptable. To me, that's a big waste of time. You know,
you said the magic words.
You know, if everybody is reading the same book and you're discussing and you're checking in and you're trying to tap into what they truly know, and you've read it yourself, that's a very different type of
experience.
feeling. But conferencing, from what Jeremiah is saying, has been my experience as well.
Right.
That's
right. But like during a lesson, if you're doing a phonics lesson and you see kids are writing words and you're giving them specific feedback, that's a different type of interview.
That's feedback. Yeah.
I agree with you on that. And that's one of the things I like to do, especially in interventions. I didn't do it as much, but guided spelling. So on the third day of my word power routine, I do guided spelling. So I will call, so we're spelling long A or long E, whatever. And you can kind of walk around and see who's getting it, who's not. So that informal assessment. And then at the same time, those kids that are struggling, you can kind of give them, and I want to get better even with that spelling piece myself as a teacher, you know, learning from people like Wiley Blevins. I had a chance to interview him.
Wiley's going to be with us.
Awesome.
Hey, why'd you ruin the surprise, Faith? It's supposed to be a surprise.
You know what? It's raining men this month. And you're our first man of the month.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is
so June it's raining men, and Wiley is going to be with us this month. So I'm glad you mentioned him. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually signed up for one of his webinars, so I'm excited to look at those. He actually did another one. We got sent something by our literacy coach about a month or so ago, and I actually attended that one. So I like learning from him. I mean, he's aged well too, but I was like, wow, man, he's 58, 57. That's amazing. I was like, dude, I thought he was in his 30s, but just another net. But yes, like that form of conferencing and corrective feedback and things like that, I love doing that when it comes, because comprehension is really my jam. I have all these other little routines and things like that. But I love teaching comprehension, and I'm actually probably a better writing teacher.
You didn't ask him a good question, Faith. You didn't ask him the question. Should I whisper it in your ear, Faith?
Yeah, whisper it.
What does he think of strategies?
What do you think about comprehension strategies?
I'm big on more metacognition. Like I've never been a big fan of people using, say, like anchor charts and things like that. I feel like you give kids metacognitive strategies, but you're really just forcing them to think. Like inferencing, like I normally take a week to explicitly teach parts of inferencing because I have a structure where I do basic inferencing where I might just see what their background knowledge is. So even in intervention, I know I have like a little thing where I ask the kids, where am I? And you'll start finding out kids' background knowledge. You'll start seeing kids that never been to a wedding. They've never done certain things. And how can they make an inference? So is it they're not smart enough or they just never been to a wedding? So you start with the basics, you do cause and effect, drawing conclusions, most likely, and then you maybe quiz them. But the rest of the year, I don't really teach inferencing. I know teachers that like to teach a skill like that, but I feel inferencing is just comprehension. I feel like you just got that or you don't. You know, some people's minds work a little quicker, and a lot of it is background knowledge. Like I've grown so much being at a school where most of the kids are Hispanic and they're first generation, so they don't come with that natural background knowledge. So to that question, and I think Tim Shanahan wrote, I think, a blog or something on it about strategies and things like that. So I feel that you can teach kids things. They can learn skills and strategies are two different things. Like you can teach kids a skill, but I think comprehension and strategies and things like that is kind of just what it is. I don't think, you can teach them those skills so they can pass the test, but being able to critically think, I think that's some born with it and some you have to teach them to know how to do it. So I feel like it's metacognition. Like I never have reading anchor charts up. I don't even do that. I've never done it.
But but metacognition is a strategy. So in other words, if you're teaching kids to be metacognitive about their thinking, they're thinking about their own thinking, that is a comprehension strategy. So
correct.
So so that is something that you do. Okay, that was the question.
Yes.
That's been a hot topic lately. But I do love how you said that many kids don't have background knowledge. So I read in your little blog that you said that you show kids videos before you start doing something where maybe you feel they don't have that background knowledge. Tell us about that.
So especially when I'm going through the process of text analysis, before I show them anything, though, because you'll kind of get caught sometimes, maybe going through a passage or something like that. Kids don't. So say, for example, I might be doing like a read aloud or I call it Bloom's book study of this story coding camp I like using Raz kids. Some kids may not know what coding is, so you might want to show them a video on what coding is. Or I know I was about to do a text analysis on, I think it was a paired passage where the kids were in New York and in these big cities. So I showed the kids videos on New York City and places like this, because you'd be amazed what kids don't. I'm from Mississippi. I work in Texas, and I'm telling the kids, I'm from Mississippi, and they're like, "What's that?" You'd be amazed how many kids don't know things like this. So you probably need to tell them about the background of these places.
Exactly. So this is very interesting. The reason Judy brought that up, and I'm sure you've seen this on Twitter, there's a lot of talk about this content-rich curriculum, bringing in a content-rich curriculum that's based in a knowledge base, But from what you're saying is it gets more basic than even that, just knowing where states are or a wedding they haven't been to. I mean, to me, what you're doing is filling in the gaps and trying to give kids background before they read something where they just don't have those experiences.
Yeah, and I look at it like myself. I was tutoring one of my students, and one of the passages I was working with was talking about camping. I didn't go camping until I was a grown man. So if I was a kid, like I was in gifted courses and all that stuff when I was a kid, like you would ask me I had to read some passages about camping. I would have known what they were talking about. Some kids don't know what a summer home is. Some of them don't have a home. They might live in a trailer. I grew up in a trailer when I was a kid. So you wouldn't even know some of these things were. So it's a lot of these things that, you just naturally need to be able to do before you go over some material with a kid. But I think one of the beauties, I feel like if people switch to more of a structural literacy approach, you will have more freedom to embed these things, because balanced literacy doesn't really lend itself to that. A lot of it is you do the mini lessons and send them off to, groups or whatever you want to call them and do that thing. But when in that time do you actually get them background knowledge on the book you're going to go over? None of that is anywhere embedded in it. Now, I'm not saying balanced literacy is evil because of that reasoning, but within structural literacy, obviously that's something that's a focus. So you can embed that a lot more in what you're doing. If you're doing explicit teaching, it's a lot easier to embed a 2 to 3 minute video. Now, you mentioned about a knowledge-rich curriculum. Now, I do think people maybe should just teach social studies explicitly for 15, 20 minutes.
Yay! So, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but say that again for everybody. One more time.
I said, I don't see anything wrong with teaching social studies for 15, 20 minutes. That's how I learned when I was a kid. I didn't even realize reading was a major part of the block, to be honest with you. It was just something we did.
I have so many questions in my mind. So, Jeremiah, I have a question. I have a couple of questions. My question. So I've been talking about this. We've done 28 episodes and I still don't have the perfect answer. maybe you have it, maybe you don't, maybe you have some ideas to share. What, in your view, first of all, question one, how long is your literacy block?
I think ours next year, I was just looking, they sent something out last week. It's gonna be 150 minutes.
Oh,
Not
wow.
150, yes, 150 minutes, yes.
I have never heard of that. I've heard of 60 to 120. I like that. And what does the breakdown look like? I saw that you're doing things that I like. You definitely have 5 pillar stuff, the phonemic awareness. And I see you do a lot of the phrasing and fluency, the fluency work that Tim Rusinski is a big fan of. So just give me a little insight. If I came into your classroom, what would I see for those 150 minutes?
Sometimes it's dependent on, so say like next year in my school, they may make the schedule a certain way, you know, you go to lunch this time or recess this time. But I normally like to start with word power or word study, you know, for those more familiar with that term. But because I stand on the table, I do all that. So I like to energize the kids to start, especially the week. That's the first thing I do is stand on the table, just get them energized. And because I feel vocabulary should come first because it ties into everything else. And then what I would like to start with is reading my reading instructional block, which could be from 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And it depends on the day. I actually don't do the same thing every day. I mix it up. It's a progression throughout the week because I structure everything according to Bloom's taxonomy, reading and writing. So, well, word study as well. So it's a progression throughout the week. So I could just make it simple. So say, for example, reading. So if I was teaching plot, the first day I would just teach kids problem solution, just what elements of plots are. The second day we would summarize, which is comprehension. The third day we would do making predictions and being able to confirm predictions and be able to do those things as you read, you know, all those metacognitive strategies. And then the fourth day we would analyze, which is what most tests actually do. Why is this important to the plot? And then the fifth day you would take a quiz. So of course that explicit teaching, but it looks differently every day. So it's not going to be as simple as, you know, you do a mini lesson, then you do, it won't be straight explicit teaching like I do, we do, you do. It might be I do, and then you read, you know, discuss, and then you answer the question. So everything, it looks different every day. So it can vary from 45 to 60 minutes because writing and reading, I make them where they're kind of, you know, interwoven, weaving, whatever. So I don't make it where you got to write a prompt every day. Because one of the statements I hate is when people say, the only way to become a good writer is to write every day. I'm like, that's not true. You can still be terrible after writing 30 minutes a day. It can happen. Trust me, I've seen plenty of people writing on Facebook and actual writers and stuff. So I'm being honest. So normally go reading, then you have writing. So next year, I'm going to call it, because our social study has to be integrated, I'm going to call it knowledge building / read aloud. So I'm going to make it, and I probably shouldn't say this, maybe one of those people might listen, but I'm going to integrate it that way where I'm going to have those, whether it's a passage or certain things where the kids will read, where they'll build that knowledge base. I already kind of have it mapped out where they learn about certain things. So it's going to embed all those things. And then I'm big on maximizing time. So even when I taught third grade last year, I was an interventionist and taught third grade the first half of the time I was at my school because some people were virtual. It's kind of a crazy thing. So instead of wasting 10 minutes when the kids came in from recess and going to what would we go to? Restroom. So they would do a restroom break. I'm not big. Restroom break is like the devil to me. I hate them. I think they're a waste of time, honestly, especially in upper grade. I hate restroom breaks. It wastes too much time. So what I would do, I would have the kids come in and we would do one of those Tim Rusinski things of my bedtime stinks. So that's when I would throw in.
We had Tim on too. We had Tim Rusinski on this show too.
Yeah, he's awesome. I mean, he actually.
Oh, Timmy.
Yeah, I had a chance to have him as a solo guest, and then when he wrote his book, Artfully Teaching the Science of Reading, which they actually sent me a copy of. So I was pretty excited about that. But I try to find a way to embed all those components. So I actually have a template where I show that when I'm doing these, whether it's fluency and actually if I look at my schedule and see that I didn't get a component. So say, for example, on Fridays, I might not do phonological awareness because that's when I give my kids a quiz on their word power stuff. So they do more vocabulary. So they don't do phonological awareness or anything like that. So I'll find Go Noodle has Clap It Out. So I'll make sure the kids do that for 3 to 4 minutes. So they make sure they get that component every day. So I make sure I embed all those components. And I'm gonna be self-contained next year. So I'm gonna be able to do it throughout the whole day.
But when you say word power, are you following a program? Because you're talking about explicit instruction. Are you following a scope and sequence?
Yes. I mean, it's my own individual routine that I created. It's a structure according to Bloom's taxonomy, which I actually presented at LitCon 22. It actually received pretty high marks. And I was able to get pretty good results right away with it. My kids in second grade grew 2.4 years, according to Mount Grosso. And then even now I'm doing it this year. My kids in interventions, they saw the similar growth pattern. So it's quite effective. And I might be giving out the goods, but on the first day, essentially introduce the pattern, the sound of, how you say it, and then they use it in context. And they get to share it. In the classroom, I have them share it out. So, they get to speak out that oral language piece. The second day, you might do a sort, a regular sort, or how fast can you go? They might draw a pictorial representation. They might do context clues. We tap it out, so we sound out the word. The third day, that's when we might do connected text or guided spelling. And I'm doing what I call phenomenal manipulation, where I do adding, deleting, segmenting, substituting, and then I do them all at one time, what I call a phenomenal link. Next year, since I'm teaching fifth grade, I'm gonna have to turn it more into not phonemes, but morphemes. So I'm really gonna tap into that next year. And then on the fourth day, I do something called conversations, where the kids literally go around in stations. And then after the fact, we share out. And then the fifth day, they do a quiz. So it is according to a actual scope and sequence. But at the same time, they're learning the pattern while also learning the vocabulary and building their oral language and writing skills.
Well, it's interesting. What you're saying is you created this structure because you didn't feel what you had was structured. I'm assuming that
side note,
need.
The year I created it, we were supposed to be using units of study phonics. I won't mention the name.
Wait, what were you supposed to be doing? Which phonics program? I'm curious.
Units of study phonics.
Units of study. Oh, drink up. He's talking about Lucy. Okay.
I tried not to mention the name.
Wait, why isn't anybody doing a different phonics program in your school, like foundations or something else?
Well, now I think next year, one of the things that they're actually moving to more, a lot of the teachers in my school, they are used to balanced literacy. Like I'm looking at the curriculum documents, I know what we're doing. I'm like, we're going to structured literacy. That's pretty much, they're throwing out guided read. They literally put on there, no guided reading. I'm like, what? And some of the teachers actually, one of the third grade teachers mentioned to me like, oh, you heard that we're not gonna be doing reading levels next year? I was like, we're not really, I didn't know this. And they didn't tell me because they knew I probably was gonna jump through the roof. That's like a big thing of mine. It's not that I hate reading levels themselves, it's just guided reading. It's like, my last 2 years at this school, I swear we might have done like 8 or 9 trainings on guided reading. I actually might be underselling it. It's like, it was like, I was like, can we do anything other than guided reading? Can we do something? So it's like, I'm dead serious. So when I saw no guided reading, I was like, thank you. Lord. No guided reading, thank you. So, I'm serious.
So you mentioned that you were a presenter at the LitCon 2023 conference.
Mm-hmm.
So for people listening, that's a reading recovery conference.
I did that conference too, but it was a long time ago. I went to that conference back in, I think, 2013.
Wow.
Well,
it's been around for a while. I think it is. The epicenter is at Ohio State. So yeah.
Well, so Jeremiah, I have to ask you, if you feel so strongly about structure and explicit teaching, you got into the LitCon conference as a presenter, and you said that it was, accepted by many.
Yeah.
I got a round of applause.
I'm interested in this.
I'm almost interested in it as well, because when I was real nervous, and then it ended up being where my session was like standing room only. I was like, what the?
Wow.
It was crazy because Jan Richardson actually was presenting at the same time I was. So I kind of was like,
wait, she saw you? Jan saw you?
Not at the conference. I actually interviewed her after the fact, but she was presenting at the same time that I was. And I want to say there was another guy, Sam Bomarito, was actually presenting at the same time I was.
So Dr. Sam and Jan Richardson.
Yeah, so this one.
Yeah, so this is a very different crowd,
Oh, yes.
Why are they so different? I was in that crowd and now I'm in a different crowd. What does it mean to be in a crowd? It's not a sorority.
What I'm saying is that Jeremiah is talking about how he felt that, what he was doing did not jive with the rest of the classrooms in his building. And now he's talking about presenting at LitCon. I'm interested. to wanna, no, because you really seem like you go both ways.
Oh,
Well,
no, Faith, did you just say that? Wait, let's Jeremiah, I'm gonna help you out.
I get it.
Put that in.
Well, that's the thing too, because I was very much. That's funny. I was very much. I'm very much. I even released a Talking Thursday or a Talking Tuesday where I talked about, let's just teach literacy. I try not to get caught up on the terms. But I had to kind of finally. I actually was talking to a guy, Nate Joseph, and he actually was helping me with some
We
research
had
stuff.
Nate on too. And
Yeah,
he does again also.
yeah.
Rainy Man? Go
He was
ahead.
on my pod. He actually had me on this podcast, and so he was kind of saying like my program is essentially a structured literacy program. Now I did go with the context of using reading levels. Now I'm having to shift because a lot of districts are moving away from using reading levels. I was like, well, you still can look at it as looking at Lexile levels, and where mine was different and why they even said it was new, but I like it. I said, don't look at it. Oddly enough, Jan Richardson's funny screen is what I use. Oddly enough, it's actually pretty effective. I used it the past couple of years, and I normally go off of that. I said you can set kids on a phonics level. Don't look at it as just what their reading level is, because I had kids this year. I had some fourth graders who were at a K, which is bad enough. But when I did their phonics, they actually probably were more at an H. So I'm like, something wasn't adding up.
What did you use to set their phonics skills? I'm just curious.
Like I said, I used Jan Richardson phonics screener, and then I actually had another little assessment I got off of TPT where I kind of broke it down even more finite as far as what they needed help in. And I normally will start them wherever their phonics level is, because as I'm seeing, and I guess with reading recovery in a lot of these programs, so I had fourth graders and I kind of see what the errors are with it, because I saw a lot of kids that couldn't decode words. Like, so they might could memorize enough to get to a K, but then when you actually see it, they stall because they don't know how to decode words. So that was one of the things. So I actually started them at H. The teachers didn't like it. So I actually started them way back at an H instead of starting them at a K, according to my progression, because I felt like they needed to catch up with their phonics before I could teach them any comprehension.
All right, Jeremiah, I got to interrupt for a second. I'm still stuck on this LitCon presentation. So question one, how did you get in? Did you write a proposal? Who did you write it to? And then the other question, what was your presentation all about?
Okay, so my first year I did it on WordPower, but this year it was on my intervention structure, which is structured literacy. So even I was a little nervous, but I did write a proposal to your question, and it was accepted. And because they even called me, they said my session the year before was one of the most popular. And so, like I said, it was standing room only, but when you throw on there that you got 2 years of growth, or you got kids growing 3 years and things like that, I mean, that's going to pique anybody's interest. I don't care if you any type of literacy. So I was able to go up there and present. It was actually pretty awesome. I actually don't like talking too long in the classroom, even though, of course, you can see I can talk a mile a minute. Most people don't know I'm from Mississippi because I talk fast and I can talk, but I actually don't like talking a lot in the classroom. So I might have talked the first 23, 30 minutes, and I thought like it was cold. I didn't know if anybody was receiving it. Apparently they loved it. They soaked up everything.
Who's they?
The LitCon crowd. So I got a round of applause at the end. I was like, wow, I mean, I was really legitimately nervous because I'm presenting structured literacy to the definition of a balanced literacy crowd.
See, Faith, this kind of makes sense to me. I've been telling you for a while, I was in that crowd for many years of my life, and I found that a lot of the people that were in my crowd were very open-minded, and all my crowd wanted to do was learn what could we do to help kids, like sponges, like this quest for knowledge. So now you know what? I don't even call myself a centrist. I don't call myself anything anymore.
Thank God. I hate that term.
I know you hated it. I know you hated it. But the point is that many people that I wasn't training with in reading recovery, right now, they're living the structured literacy lifestyle too. I found that many of those people were very open-minded. And that's why I could predict a great guy like Jeremiah that had something great to say. Of course, he should get a round of applause. But I think the problem with that other world is not with the people in the room. It's maybe the higher ups. Maybe I'm not going to say the names. I'm not going to do names.
Off the regular conversation with one of the people who's kind of wanted to, and I was trying to let her know because their whole thing, they hate structured literacy because they saying that it's basically making people follow a script. I was like, do you understand what we're going through in these classrooms and
That's
in
right.
intervention rooms and things like that? They're trying to make you follow a script. Like you could be doing well. Like I'm gonna give you a true anecdote. My last year, I did a presentation at my school. It actually was just on engagement and different things like that. And I had a different method. And so the teachers really received it or whatever. And then I actually was getting pretty good results. And even in interventions, I had kids going from like H's to O's. I mean, kids that are jumping 6, 7 levels, like rarely in each group. Like it was kids in the same group that were doing this. You know, I got a group of second graders in the middle of the year and 3 of them got to level. So by the end of the year. So I was getting the results and then I still get a note in my box about guided reading. I'm like, are you serious? Like you really should do guided reading. That's how it's like that type of, some people are so deeply ingrained with what they're doing, they just can't see the forest for the trees. So, but I felt like the reading recovery crowd was, I mean, very accepting. I mean, I had a chance to talk with a lot of them outside of, you know, the presentation. And I mean, you had some of the typical stuff that was there. I know Paul Thomas was there. I actually had a chance to interview him and I follow him on Twitter.
You're hearing all the names you tell me about.
Yeah, it seems like a very interesting crowd. PT.
No, but he's saying there was a lot of people like me that were open-minded.
Oh, very. I mean, I felt like I never look at it, anybody that's balanced literacy. I tell people, I don't think any of these people, especially the people at, I'm gonna say the lower levels, I don't think they're trying to ruin kids' lives. As you talk about, you was a balanced leader. Maybe you knew it wasn't right, but it's kind of some teachers, I told somebody, they really just doing what they told. A lot of people just don't want to do anything different because they don't want to get fussed at or some administrator. They're not doing it to hurt kids. They're just doing what they're told. I'm just bold enough where I'm just like, I thank my grandma for that I'm just bold enough to just say, I'm dare to be different. Now that gets you in a lot of trouble when you got to deal with certain things. A lot of stuff I dealt with in my career because of that. But at the same time, you know, I don't blame those teachers for that because a lot of them are in those systems where balanced literacy has dominated the last 25 years and your administrators. And as I told that person, a lot of it's those assistant principals or those literacy coaches who are pushing this stuff. And they tell you, like, I know we have one person on our campus, you know, speaks about conferencing like it's regular practice. And I'm like, you know, it's kind of, you know, when you're doing your conferencing, I'm like, who's doing conferencing? Nobody does that. So it's kind of like that type of thing. A lot of people are so embedded in their thought process that that's what they do. So I really, I don't know. So like I said, I don't blame balanced literacy teachers. So in that way, it's just some of them at the higher levels, I do see, it seems like a lot of window dressing, trying to be more structured literacy or more evidence-based practice. And it's hard for me to believe they don't know they're wrong. I don't see how anybody, you talk about 3Qing, how any person could look at 3Qing and like think that it's great. I'm an interventionist. I'm trying to work with kids and the word in the book says cat and the kid says tiger because it looks at the picture. I'm like, are you serious?
That is
like, I see that.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
bullshit.
Yeah.
It's time, right? But
I think that what I'm seeing, and I'm in New York and living in Connecticut, I'm seeing that there's hope. I think that a lot of administrators are seeing the light. I think that also laws are changing, right? Faith, a lot of laws and legislations are happening. So those that don't see the light, they will have no choice but to see the light because the kids are counting on us. And the bottom line is the data has been really, really bad in this country for a really long time. I don't understand why we didn't all have this aha moment when the data looked so damn crappy for so damn long. And you know what? It was literally killing me on a daily basis to see kids that some of them are in transitional homes and not being given the opportunity to learn how to read. Life is hard and it's going to be damn hard if you can't read. So I am really appreciative of you, Jeremiah. You saw the light before I saw the light, and I appreciate that. But once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Well, I think about one of my inspirations, somebody I discovered after a couple of years of my career, this lady named Marva Collins. She was in Chicago.
Oh, love Marva Collins. Oh my!
I read her book.
I read a couple of her books. Amazing.
And she was doing all this stuff back then. I mean, she didn't have a term for it. She kind of was like, hey, if you have kids memorize words, they learn, that one word. But if you teach them how to sound it out or, the phonics part of it, they'll learn thousands of words. I'm like, whoa. And then she was doing critical thinking, poems. I'm like, this lady, she didn't have nothing like actually written down formally what her structure was. She just went in there and taught. And I think, that's where I draw a lot of inspiration from. I just know to go in there and just, do what's best for kids and don't worry about, if some administrator is going to call you their favorite. I've never won teacher of the month, never won teacher of the year, never won teacher of anything. So it's like, I never want any of that stuff. So
Look,
it's kind of like, you just go in there and teach. You don't worry about all that.
That's why we wanted to talk to you, because you are a badass. Seriously.
Oh, I'll take that.
You,
I'll take
you
that.
you are doing what you have to do, and you're like, that's it. I'm just going to do it.
Oh,
And
trust me, people don't like it though. But
I know.
But the
I
they
kids,
know.
don't like
the
it. I'm
kids you
telling you.
work with must like it because they're coming out literate.
You know, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you're getting results, and, you know, it cracks me up that, you know, in your blog, you talk about the results you're getting, and yet it says here, even with accelerated growth, I was told you're engaging in bad practice. I mean, that's like, what is wrong with people? That makes.
Well, that particular person, that even at the time I had some choice words, that person had never taught reading. They taught high school. So it was kind of, and they taught high school biology. So it's kind of like, now I look back on it, it's laughable now. Like,
It's laughable.
It is. It's like, now I don't even care. It's like, you said that. Now I'm a bit of a troll, I'm not gonna lie. So I made sure one of my articles, I saw how one student changed my practice. So I make sure to mention the word every once in a while just to be a troll. So I am like that.
All right, so listen, we're going to wrap it up. Do you have any last thoughts, Jeremiah, that you would like to add that we have not asked you?
Well, no, just for a lot of the young teachers out there, you know, just follow your heart, you know, be honest, be cognizant of the fact if you do things a little differently that you're gonna have some opposition, but at the end of the day, just do what's best for kids, especially with somebody that's teaching literacy, whether you're talking kids from whatever the background is, you need to make sure that they get whatever they're needing. Like, as people say, yes, they may tell you to do it one way, but there's something called closing your door and just getting busy. They're not in your room every day. So just make sure you just understand that. So you need to do what's best for your kids. So that's probably the one thing I leave everybody with. Just make sure you do what's best for kids and don't do what's, because I'm gonna rephrase it a different way. Don't do what's best for you, do what's best for them.
Exactly. Put the children first. For a long time, it's been adult interests that seem to come first, and not the kids. Judy, any last thoughts?
So I'm damn proud of this country for moving in the right direction. I have some people around me that are still pessimistic and they don't think that change is going to happen, but I really do believe that change is going to happen. I think once things are set up from laws, this is not optional. This has to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's really important also as an educator to follow your gut. When something doesn't feel right, when something doesn't look right, when you're teaching a kid and they're struggling, you can't just let it go on for too long. We let it go on in this country for too long. And I think that too long is now over. Learn as much as you can. I'm in my 25th year in education. I'm sitting there on letters training. I'm doing what I have to do. Tomorrow, I'm hosting a decoding boot camp with my second grade team. I'm hoping people come, but just don't stop learning.
Oh, so you're actually like regular school building.
Yeah, I'm in a school building every day. I'm coaching in 2 buildings in the South Bronx, and I love it.
Wow.
I love it. And I also tutor kids, but yeah, don't stop learning. I'm hoping my teachers show up, but if they don't, I'll schedule another one next week because we all are in this together. And it's like Jeremiah said, the kids are counting on us.
So my last thought is, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall at the LitCon conference.
Yeah, you're like
I really would have liked to have seen all these people listening to what you're saying, and because
listen, that's a very good sign. I see
it
as a very good sign. I see it as a very, very good sign.
I know.
I'm not saying it's not a good sign. I find it interesting because of what I read and what I see. And it's interesting that you got yourself in there and they were listening to you. I find that fascinating.
I know Nate Joseph had told me, he said, like, man, you present these results, like, because I had map scores and things. I actually had interim results at that time. He's like, man, you present this stuff, they're gonna boo you out the room. That this thing work. I was like, hey man, I gotta go do me. So I told him I'll focus more on the reading levels. I'm not gonna focus as much on this data stuff, this screaming, but I'm gonna focus a little bit on these reading levels. That's a bit more palatable. So, I had that in the back of my mind, how I would present it where it'd be more palatable. I'm pretty good at knowing how to do that. Even though at my school they don't think I'm very good at knowing how to play the game, I'm a little better at it than people realize. So,
Well, I think you're very wise, Jeremiah. I think you're very smart because some of this is a game. And in order to help the kids, sometimes you have to play the game a bit. And I do think you're making a difference. Clearly, you spoke. The funny thing of it is, all these names you mentioned, Tim Rosinski, Nate Joseph, Wiley Blevins, these are all people that we've either spoken to or will continue to talk to, especially this month. And it's very exciting that you are kicking off our June It's Raining Men Month. And we are so happy that you joined us. I think it's great that you are this young, innovative teacher looking to make a difference for kids, and it gives me hope. So thank you very much. We're excited, and that's it. We're going to follow each other on Twitter. I hope that we remain friends.
Oh, for sure. I gotta hang out with y'all sometime, like, man.
Yeah, why not? We met up in the city.
Y'all my type of reading teachers.
Come to New York. You'll have fun.
Or maybe Judy and Faith will go on a road show together.
There you go.
To wrap it up, follow Faith at Faith Burkowski on Twitter. Follow Judy at Boxner Judy. On Instagram, follow Judy at Boxner Damsky. On Instagram, Faith High Five Literacy. And join our Facebook group, The Literacy View, Real Teachers Letting Loose.
Excellent. All right. Good night, and thank you so much.
Thanks.